Are you a caregiver for an older adult, or do you know someone who is? If so, you're not alone. You are one of 37.1 million Americans providing unpaid care to an older adult. The numbers are growing exponentially as the older population grows, and in a few years, it's estimated that 1 in 5 Americans are going to be caring for an older adult. Even though many of us are caregiving, it's easy to feel isolated and overwhelmed in your situation. Additionally, caregiving has a negative impact on the caregiver. It increases anxiety, depression, and hypertension. Today, we're going to offer some help. Welcome to Seniority Authority, the podcast where I track down experts to answer your questions on aging. I'm your host, Kathleen Toomey. Let's get smarter about growing older. Welcome to Seniority Authority. I'm your host, Kathleen Toomey. Carol Bradley Bursack is an author, writer, certified dementia support group facilitator, and experienced caregiver for older adults. Author of the book Minding Our Elders, as well as a longtime newspaper column, Carol has advised hundreds of caregivers of older adults, and she's here to share her tips with us. Thank you so much, Carol, for joining Seniority Authority.
Thanks for having me, Kathleen.
Let's start with describing why caregiving for an older adult can be particularly hard versus caregiving for a child.
It's hard because we're watching decline. When you're raising a child, you're watching them grow and get younger and hopefully have a life ahead. When we see our parents aging, some of us age them on our own side. We don't like aging. Our culture doesn't like aging. But some of it is we do see decline, and we don't want to see that happen. We want to help them and not be disrespectful in doing it. And that's not always easy either.
You're absolutely right, because also parents and older adults can be, shall we say, resistant to offers of help because they don't feel they need it.
Yeah.
And you have so much experience. You've done caregiving for at least 8 older adults in your lifetime while you were raising your girls. You have so much experience. You have kind of a toolbox of sorts to help people. Tell us, what is one top issue that caregivers are challenged with, and what is your solution?
We don't know how to open the topic. We want to do it respectfully. Their appearance, we don't like trampling on their rights. Right. And they want their autonomy. Let's face it, we want to keep them safe. We want to wrap them in bubble wrap.
Yes.
We don't want anything to happen to them. They understandably want autonomy. And so there's that push-pull we have all the time. And both sides are totally understandable. So what we have to do is, if we can, it's good to open up the conversation, make it a natural part of life. Aging is a natural part of life. They have friends who are aging. We had grandparents who are aging. So instead of ignoring it and pretending it doesn't happen, make it natural and talk about it. And if we do that, then it's easier to open the topic when we have concerns.
I think you're right on the money. And so much doesn't happen because people are afraid to talk about the subject, right? I like your suggestion, which is open up the topic when it seems natural. Can you give me an example so our listeners can emulate your recommendations? What does that look like?
One great way to do it is if usually as our parents get older, they have friends who either themselves, depending on the age of our parents and their friends, have needed care or been in the hospital or needed to go to even to assisted living. Or if we're younger, maybe they were helping their parents with these things. But when we're talking, though, we can say, that's got to be tough. What would you like? How would you like me to step in? How could I help you should these things happen as you get older? And we all are going to need some help. So just using examples, even in the news, this happened to this well-known person. What would you like?
Right. If that happened to you, how would you want me to respond? That's awesome. So to our listeners, I think that's one of the things we can take away is have that conversation, take that opportunity when they're talking about such and such a neighbor moved to be closer to their children. Don't just ignore it. Say, well, what would you want to do? I think that's awesome. What is the next most prominent issues caregivers have? And what's your suggestion?
What do they want? What choices do they want? Well, they want to age at home, as most people do. If that's their choice, are they open to making adjustments to the home? Are they open to in-home care? Should that be needed? Or would they like to move to independent care and then assisted living? Some people make that choice. And then right away, I want to age at home. Most of us
Yes.
do. And then you make those choices, and that's understandable. But then you can say, we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. But what would your next choice be?
Okay.
If for some reason, or if one of you would be able to stay home and age within the home, but the other one needs more care, what would some ideas be so that we can best help you move forward, and we'll include you as much as we can, as much as you're capable of doing, and hopefully that will be all the way. But we never know what's going to happen.
And I think that's really important to stay on that topic because, as we all know who have done caregiving for older adults, they suffer from a lack of imagination when it comes to their own health. Having worked with hundreds of older adults, it's amazing to me how people can see something happening to their friend of theirs and they would never imagine it happening to them. So unfortunately, we have to be the ones to paint that picture and say, if you would
denial is human.
denial is alive and kicking.
It's human. For all of us. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
that is true for all of us. Absolutely. And I think it's also easier for people who are listening. The sooner you have these conversations, the better. Because the farther away it is, it's easier to conceptualize because that's way in the future. So,
well, and then if you start early, you don't have to get into the trap of making it your only topic of conversation.
yes.
You don't want to ruin your relationship with your parents by just every time you see them hammering away at this topic.
Yeah.
And so if you start early, you can get these ideas and get on with life. And then later on say, oh, what would you like if this happened because something else came up in the news? So it's much more natural that way.
And I think you've talked earlier about planting the seed. So you've just keep planting these seeds so that you don't come in like a bombshell and say, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. My problem often is I feel like I have the solution. I'm going to come in, present the solution. Yeah. Nobody wants to hear that. No one.
Yeah, no. Yeah. We think we know what's best.
Yes, exactly.
And that gets back to the safety issues. And we do have to accept that they have a right to take some risks. And I'm not talking about advanced dementia and these other things and where we have to become more resolved to keep people from some terrible things from happening. But even in dementia, people need to be able to make some choices. Even if it's the clothing they're going to wear or something, because part of human beings, even children want to make choices. And people who've made choices for decades and run their own lives, you just can't say, oh, sit back, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we could say that, but they're going to fight. And why wouldn't they?
Of course. And that leads us to one of the next pet peeves of yours, which we talk a lot about caregiving, and inevitably someone comes up with the expression, parenting your parents, which is something that you feel strongly about. Like we shouldn't be calling it parenting your parents. Tell me a little bit more about why that is.
First, I want to say I have very dear friends, wonderful caregivers who have used those terms, and they use them respectfully. They don't mean it as a way of taking away their parents' adulthood. But the term aggravates me because your parents never become your children. I mean, we can mother our mother because we're giving love and those things. But when we start using those terms without thinking about them, we can start treating them as children.
Mm.
And with family caregivers, I give them a lot of leeway. I mean, if you're having to feed them and change diapers and they're resisting everything you want and they say, oh, they're acting like a toddler, I'm not going to say, oh, don't do that because, well,
Right.
it's difficult and it's just words. But there is a mentality there that we need to be aware of. And when my dad had brain surgery that was supposed to correct the fluid that was building up in his brain from a World War II brain injury, some scar tissue that was supposed to make everything all wonderful. And what happened is he ended up with overnight dementia. And it lasted 10 years until his death, totally changed life that night. He went into surgery. I caught his eye as they were wheeling him in, and he gave me a little sign that said, "Are you okay? Everything's going to be fine."
Yeah.
Came out of it a whole different person with Herman. We named him Herman, the voice in his head, and all of these things. And I got to say that I had to punt the whole time, and my family kind of jumped on board, and we all learned as we went. He was in a nursing home with wonderful staff. I was there every day, and it was great. But never did I think, oh, I'm taking care of a child. I had children at home.
Yeah.
I had 2 boys at home that were needing my care, and it's just a whole different world. Dad was not my child. He was my father. He was my father until the day he died. And so when I see organizations, and there are still some out there that are using that term, we're going to help you parent your parent, that's when I become irritated. Not with these family caregivers so much, but organizations and stuff, because I think that just perpetuates the idea that older people become infants.
Yeah.
And they don't.
They don't. And they always, especially if it's your parents, they're always your parents. And they have that dignity and that identity that they've earned, they've deserved.
They have earned it. They have spent decades of life going through the ups and downs, the hardships. They've had hardships some of us can't even dream of because of going through everything, depending on how old they were, anything from the Depression to the different world wars and things. I mean, we all have our problems, but they have been through it too. And they've been through hard times and come out, and they've had happy times, and they raised us. So no, that is not lost. That's not gone.
When we started at the top of the show talking about this and talking about unpaid family caregivers, you are one, I am one. One of the challenges is that you feel so alone. And I know that you host and facilitate a lot of support groups. But for many people, getting out, getting in the car, driving to a support group isn't a possibility because they have no respite, they have no part-time care for their parent or the person that they're taking care of. What do you suggest for people like this who can't physically go to a support group and who feel so alone?
I have been one in all my life, and part of that was actually not having the time. Part of it is that I am an extremely introverted person who I have
thank you for doing this podcast because
you're welcome.
Don't appear introverted, so I appreciate that.
No, I truly am. And in that, I need to get away from people for a time to regroup. I love people. I mean, it's a myth that introverts don't like people. That's just ridiculous. I mean, some probably don't, but most of us really love people. I'm giving my life to support groups and trying to help other people, and that's been a passion for me. But I need to have time to myself to regenerate, and I think a lot of people do, actually. It's just a spectrum. It's just a matter of some people need more than others.
Absolutely.
Some people gain their energy from being around a lot of people. For those people, I hope that they can get out in person to one, because many people do benefit. But for many of us, online is, first of all, the only way because of time. Secondly, for many of us, it's preferable because I get up super early in the morning. I've been a morning person. I was born that way. And one of those annoying people that's really happy when
I wish I was a morning person.
Yeah, and I'm no good at night. But anyway, it's just that you can go online anytime you want. And I facilitate 2 very large caregiving, or not, one is caregiving and one is for another topic, but support groups. And I mean, I am often on at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm communicating with somebody who was just ready to go to bed.
Wow.
And so we cross over, but it's like they needed to talk to somebody. They needed feedback. At least they needed to know there was a listening ear.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of online groups, is that you can do it when it works for you.
Yeah.
There doesn't have to be somebody there immediately, but you can read what people have said. You can post something. You can gain so much. And so that is something I didn't have early on with all of my 20 years different elders that I wish I would have. It would have been helpful because it was very difficult for me to find any support, which is why I wrote my book, because I talked to other caregivers and I wanted to get something out there for people. But it's just something that try and get to a support group either physically or online or both. I mean, that's maybe ideal. The Caregivers Action Network, they have a lot of different groups that they can point you to, and the Alzheimer's Association could do the same.
Okay, so Caregivers Action Network and Alzheimer's Association will put those
are just
in the show notes for folks.
Those are two of them. And there is a paid one, and I'm going to mention this because it's the only one out there where you get to talk with a geriatrician.
Okay.
And this is Dr. Leslie Kernison.
Yes.
Her website is betterhealthwhileaging.net.
We have had Dr. Kernison on the podcast. She's fantastic.
She
but
truly,
it's worth mentioning her book again, Better Health While Aging. That's also her website, Carol?
betterhealthwhileaging.net. And she does have a book that's very good. We can, since it's right here. But I was going to say, I do facilitate her support group. So, but the reason I'm mentioning it is because it's the only one like it, and she is phenomenal. When Your Aging Parent Needs Help is her really wonderful book, and it's on Amazon.
My copy is across the room. That is a great resource. When Your Aging Parent Needs Help by Dr. Leslie Kernison. We'll put that in the show notes too. So she has a paid support group, but you get to talk to a geriatrician, and she literally wrote the book. So can't recommend that enough.
Yeah, she has these phone calls. And then she also has wonderful geriatric care managers on phone calls. I mean, this is professional help that you spend more time than you would in a doctor's office. They listen to you. It's really a phenomenal group. So it isn't horribly expensive. So if you get a chance and you want that kind of interaction, I would go to her website. That's how you can learn more.
Excellent. Excellent. Speaking of Toolbox, can you give us an example of how to flip the script if you are trying to help, let's say, a parent, and they say, no, I have been doing this for 80 years. I don't need help. How would you reframe that when someone is resisting help? Let's say in the bathroom or getting dressed, or can you give us an example of what you would say to try to break through that resistance?
Sometimes you can break through just by saying, this would really help me. I'm having trouble with this. And everyone wants to give, even people who are struggling. And if they think they can help, you could say, could you help me with this? And sometimes just flipping it around, as you say, flipping the script so that they are helping you by doing what it is you really want them to do.
Yeah.
And actually they are. It's like one of the first things you need to learn with dementia care is don't argue. Well, even without dementia, all arguing does in most cases is make people defensive. And you can understand that. So the idea is more open up. And sometimes we have to step back. We put our ideas out there and then step back. And that goes along with flipping the script too. It's just like, oh, I was kind of bossy there. And maybe we were. Maybe we should apologize.
Right.
But even if we weren't, we can always say, oh, I'm sorry. That was just really not very smart of me. Let's start over. Can we do this? I think if we try and gain their input instead of bossing them around, and again, who wants that? We wouldn't want it.
Yeah.
So why would they?
Well, I think your point is well taken. And I think what happens is the people who are caregivers are also raising children, having a job, organizing their home, as well as maybe the person whose care they're providing. And so you're rushed and you're like, I got to get this done. You got to check off the list. You don't think about your audience where you're barreling into someone's home and saying, can we do this? Let's do this. Let's do that. And that's very off-putting.
Oh, it absolutely is. And if we remember humanity, think about what we would want if we were losing our ability to do a lot of things. What would we want? How would we want to be treated? It's a matter of just love. And sometimes we can be so filled with love and that it becomes fear. And that's where the bossiness comes, and you got to do this. And also, we get tired. I mean, let's face it, I could go on for hours about how exhausting it all is. I had 5 people living in different spots that I was trying to take care of at one time and running to hospitals and all of that. I know how exhausting it is. And so I'm not downplaying any of that. But I am saying that part of our exhaustion means that we have to take care of ourselves.
Okay,
and
good.
That's another topic. But the other part can be sometimes we just want to make things change so badly that we just grit our teeth and dive in and try and get bossy, and then all that backfires. So it's like dealing with anyone. We have to be a little bit, look at both sides.
Yeah. And when you get to that point as a caregiver and you have so much frustration because you're trying so hard and you're trying to help the person, they're not accepting that, which it's that is more particular to adults. When you get to that level of frustration, as you have, taking care of multiple people in multiple places, what's your recommendation for the caregiver when they get that frustrated?
Step back, as I mentioned earlier, finding things. If we think of something for ourselves and do something for ourselves each day. And a lot of times self-care is a lot of people roll their eyes and they don't like the word. And I get that. But all it means is that remembering that we count too. And we are going to be better caregivers if we do something for ourselves as well. We may be more patient. We'll stay healthier. And those things, it doesn't have to be, I want to take a trip to Tahiti. Well, that's not really it's not realistic. And so, but can we make a cup of tea and go off somewhere by ourselves? For me, it was just reading, even for 15 minutes, kind of airs out my brain. That's just how I work. It is not the same. A lot of people just would groan over that, but maybe they want to go for a run, which is probably healthier, or walk for a park, or maybe next time you're at the grocery store, buy yourself a bunch of flowers.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
Sure. One day, each day, if you can think of one thing, okay, I have special teas. I do this for myself yet. This is how I mark my days. I love tea, green tea, black
coffee.
tea, herb teas. Yeah. And I have coffee in the morning too. But throughout the day, I have different teas that kind of mark my day. And with caregiving, you think, okay, things are a little bit calm right now. I'm going to make myself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, maybe do some deep breathing. That can be helpful. But more than that, just remember to just breathe naturally instead of holding your breath, as a lot of us are doing most of the time. And then do one thing, at least one small thing for yourself each day, saying, this is for me. This is what I want. Yeah. And it's amazing what just a small thing, how big that can seem.
Yeah.
Because we touched base with ourselves, and some of that is learning to manage stress. We've talked about that. That's for ourselves. That's another way. People talk about mindfulness a lot these days. That's in the news, but that can mean prayer and meditation for some people, or it can be an app that helps with mindlessness too. Yeah, we have some of that. We as caregivers sometimes have mindlessness, but mindfulness. These things are all part of self-care. They aren't necessarily separate from self-care. Is learning how to manage our stress so that we are not so overwhelmed. And again, I'll say that makes us better caregivers as well as healthier.
I had that exact experience this week. I was really tired and I went to a yoga class, and despite the fact that I felt like should sleep. And I came back so re-energized, so appreciative of the chance that I still have to be with my mom. And it just changed my energy completely. It was so dramatic. It was wonderful. Let's talk about friends. Do you have a practical suggestion to enlist friends who say, what can I do to help?
I do. One of the things is sometimes we don't want to tell somebody what they can do to help because that seems a little intrusive too. But I know with me, a lot of things that people would like to do for me or would have wanted to do for me with caregiving, they would love, but it isn't necessarily what I would love. There again, this goes back to my basic personality. I would love some time to myself. I would love some peace and quiet. Somebody else may just adore having a manicure go out or the mani-pedi thing or a massage or any of these things that a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to do this for her. And it's lovely. It truly is lovely. But that puts the caregiver on the end of saying, thank you. I really appreciate it. But, it's not really something that's just one more thing for them to do. So it helps other people too. If we say, if somebody could sit with dad or mom for a Saturday morning, so I could just do whatever I want to do, that would just be amazing. So what is it that you want? It doesn't have to be big. Often it's time. And some people say, oh, bring them a meal. Well, great idea. But maybe that's coming at a time when you just wanted to crash and didn't want to deal with extra food. Mm-hmm. So you could say, they say, can I bring you a meal? You could say, you really could on
like next week,
specific day,
yeah.
Or in the evening, and a lunch or something. Or you could say something that I could just put on the table and not have to heat up. But if you give specifics, people do want to help, I think, even though often they can't help much. But they need to have a little direction, and I think it's better for everyone.
I agree. Give them something to say yes to, and that will help them. Yeah, like, this is what I could use. Could you do that? And I think for our listeners out there, when your friends offer to do something for you, take it. And as Carol says, be specific. Here's what will help me. So I think that's great advice. I so appreciate all the recommendations and suggestions that you've given to us, Carol. It's been phenomenal. And I hope that our listeners really focus on your recommendations of doing one thing for themselves every day, of giving specifics to folks who are offering to help, to remember those recommendations when they get frustrated dealing with caregiving and realizing it's natural. It comes with the territory.
Yeah, it is. And it's been just a real pleasure, Kathleen. You have a wonderful website yourself, so I hope people spend a lot of time there.
That's what we're here for, to answer people's questions on aging. So again, if you have more questions that we haven't covered, email me at info@seniorityauthority.org. I'll connect with Carol. Maybe we'll have her back if we have enough people with questions. That's our show for today. If you enjoyed it, please give us a rating or a thumbs up or a heart, whatever podcast platform you listen to. And please share this with your friends. 1 out of 5 of us is caring for an older adult. So together we can get stronger and do better, and we can get smarter about growing older. Until next time. That's our show for today. If you liked it, please tell your friends so we can reach more minds and keep the conversation going. Or follow us on social @Seniority Authority. I'm Kathleen Toomey. Until next time, enjoy your chance to get smarter about growing older.